and it gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator this evening, who is Danny Banks, the District 71 Training Chair and also VPE in Leicester Leaders. So with that, I'd like to hand over control of the meeting to our moderator, Danny Banks.
Thank you very much for that, Madam Programme Quality Director, Brenda. I'd also like to welcome onto the meeting immediate past President Gerard Mannix and Elizabeth Jordan. I think I saw her join us. So welcome, Elizabeth, who's a Club Growth Director. Well, good evening, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome. This is our final Tuesday training session of this year. So we thought we'd go out on a bang and organise a panel discussion on pathways. In these sessions, we've sought to find the best people in the district and the most knowledgeable people about these topics, the various topics to present. So tonight we have got 3 experts from within our division on pathways. And I'd like, first of all, to introduce them. Then I'll just talk a little bit about the objective for the evening, and I'll have some written questions, but if you have any questions, can you put them in the chat, please? Because we want to try and address as many people's questions as possible, and we've only got probably about 50 minutes to do that. So if you could make your questions as succinct as possible and put them in the chat, we will try and get through everybody's question tonight. So thank you for that. Well, our panelists tonight, well, first of all, we have Patricia O'Reilly, who most of you won't need an introduction for, because I'm sure most of you will know Patricia. She, in her history, has been a founder member for Balbriggan Toastmasters. She's currently a member of Society Toastmasters Dublin, and is also starting an online advanced club, Molly Malone. She served at all levels within the district, area, district, division and district, and was our Division 71 director in 2018-19. She is now Regional 9 advisor. Toastmasters have a series of advisors for clubs around the world. Region 9 stretches from New Jersey and New York, through New England, up into Quebec, and then over to New Brunswick in that eastern bit of the United States and Canada. So that's her area that she advises for. And to be honest with you, I think they're very lucky to have her, because, you know, I've had many dealings with Patricia and she's always been extremely helpful and knowledgeable about anything I've asked her. So the first, she's also passionate about pathways. That's why she's here, and she's worked hard with pathways over the years on various aspects, and she's led some training sessions for us in the past. Secondly, we've got John Alsop, who has been a member of Toastmasters since 2015. Currently is member of 2 clubs, East Hearts Speakers and Cornerstone Communications. He's held every club role in those clubs and has been president of 2 different clubs. Again, he served as area director and is currently Division H director, which is over in the sort of northeast of London, over towards East Anglia in England. He, last year, 2020-21, was Pathways, District Pathways Chair. And he's completed 2 pathways, and he's currently working through a 3rd, dynamic leadership, and is also in the process of applying for his Pathways Distinguished Toastmaster Award. In his spare time, he is managing director of a precision engineering manufacturing company. So please welcome John. And our 3rd panelist tonight, we've got Somesh Kumar. Now, he's been a member of Toastmasters for 7 years. He's done most of the committee roles. He's served as president, area director, and currently is in his 2nd term as division director for Division D in Ireland. He is president of Athlone Toastmasters, and has set up an advanced online club known as Personal Growth Leaders. And he's achieved Distinguished Toastmaster Award twice under the previous system and under Pathways. And as I say, this year he's Division D Director, as well as being District 71 Pathways Chair for the district. So that, Toastmasters, is our panel. A very knowledgeable and very experienced panel. The purpose of tonight is to help people with the Pathways journey. So we will have on the call tonight, and we've got nearly 50 people on the call, we will have people who are ordinary Toastmaster, not ordinary Toastmasters, but Toastmaster members who just want some information, some ideas about Toastmasters. We'll have some VPEs and presidents who want to know perhaps more about Basecamp. So please be patient with one another. Don't forget, one of our core values is respect, and we need to be aware that there will be people on the call who are at different stages in the journey. And what might to us be seem to be a straightforward question might be something that they're struggling with. So let's say the aim tonight is to look at how we can help you use Pathways and develop Pathways for yourself and for your club. Not so much about, you know, the pros and cons of Pathways. It's not a debate about that. It's simply here tonight to help you as members, as officers, as area officers. So what I will do, as I said, I've had some written questions, and also I can see there are some going in the chat at the moment. I will try my best to make sure that we cover all areas and we try not to repeat questions. So we will start. If everybody's happy with that, if you have a question, put it in chat. The first written question I had, and I'll ask John also, if you can answer this one. And this is from Bob Finch of Clamodunum Club. Can't even pronounce the English clubs. We're going to be all right when we get onto some of your Irish clubs. But anyway.
Camulodunum.
There you go.
The ancient name of Colchester.
There you go. Not only Pathways, but history as well tonight. So anyway, the question is, as a Basecamp manager, it's easy to register a Pathways project completion, but it's easy to forget to register that on DCP because obviously you have to go to Club Central. Is there any likelihood that World Headquarters will get these two programs linked?
Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Bob. That's a really good question because I think many of us find some of the processes a little bit cumbersome. Just to give some background on this, the Pathway program is actually is set up by a third-party operator, so that sits on a different platform to Toastmasters International. The main reason for that, I guess, is that Toastmasters want a really professionally approach to the training experience. So the Pathways program sits on a separate system to Toastmasters International, and that is probably the primary reason, the only real reason why the two processes run semi-separately. So in terms of whether or not Toastmasters International will be able to bring the two together, I've certainly not heard any mention of it, and I think based on the principle that the two systems are on separate platforms will make it fairly difficult. So I think it's something we've just got to persevere with for the time being. I know it can be frustrating, but I think on the other hand, it also gives the opportunity for keeping track of the DTM process within the overall overall Leadership Central on TMI, rather than separate to the the DCP program. Does that answer the question, Bob?
I think
let me say it was the answer I expected. I would have loved it if you'd have been able to say, well, yes, they're working on that at the moment because it would make it so much more convenient for Basecamp managers. But as I say, it was the answer I expected, but it's always worth asking the question, just in case.
Yeah, well, as I say, that's unfortunately that's the way it is. But I hope it's explained to other people that maybe not as familiar with it.
Okay, thank you, John. Somesh, if you could answer this one, please, from Brian Marshall. How do you get people who are used to with the book and maybe not all that computer literate inspired enough to get themselves A, online in the first place, and B, fully engaged? Did you get all that? Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, I read, Danny. Who has asked the question?
From Brian Marshall.
Brian Marshall, thank you for your question. And this is the mindset change that we need. I just wanted to talk about one guy called, he's a management guru. His name is Robin Sharma. And what he says is, every change is hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, and glorious in the end. Every change is hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, and glorious in the end. So the change curve that Toastmasters International has gone through would have been hard in the beginning. And I can really understand the people who are not into technology. I think it's a huge challenge. What we can do is we can work together with those people who are finding it challenging to go online. We can, in the COVID times, it is basically screen sharing, have a Zoom chat, screen share, try and make them understand. Of course, it is for those people who would actually be interested in going to the computer at least. I think there would be some members, some people who are not at all interested into technology. And I think that would be a huge challenge. It's the only way out for those people is that they would probably continue, but they would continue in a way where another member is always going to support them in terms of getting them online. So my answer summary is that we have to work very closely with those individuals who are finding it technologically challenged. And I firmly believe in our core values: integrity, respect, service, excellence. So service and the service part comes into for that question. So thank you very much, Brian, for the question. I hope I have answered it to a certain extent, at least.
Okay, thank you, Somesh. Patricia, we've got a question here, which is it's quite a long question, but I'll try and summarise it. Bob Buckley, I don't know if Bob's on the call. He feels that Pathways is a little bit too restrictive in that it only allows people to, it insists people do a variety rather than just do a 5 to 7 minute speech, which was the original Pathway. Under under Pathways now, you know, there are various things, podcasts, blogs, giving speeches to other organisations and so on. And he says, to his mind, Toastmasters doesn't need to have a responsibility to other social formats. And it should focus on delivering a 7 to 7 minute entertaining, informative speech. And this is causing members to drain away. Patricia.
Danny, so what I would say to this is that, you know, if you look back, and I don't want to keep going back to the legacy program, because for me, we left that behind in March 2018, and now it's time to move on and embrace Pathways. But this has been brought up in the question. And if we go back, those of us who were around long enough to go back to the legacy program, there were advanced manuals there, and I can remember them. One of them was to do with television. I mean, what had that got to do with me at the time? It's like asking someone to do social media, a blog on social media now. One of them was on public relations. It was a whole manual with 5 projects around public relations. Again, it wasn't something I was interested in, but I could understand and respect that other Toastmasters may very well have been interested in it. So I don't believe that Pathways has in any way reduced our choice of electives that we can use. There are many Toastmasters today, and certainly if we want to encourage young people to join the organization, many of them will want to take on the project, such as the podcast or writing a blog or for social media. That is what they're going to want to do. And so we have to cater for the younger members, the newer members coming along, as well as catering for the older ones like me. And I think the other question he asked was about the 5 to 7 minutes. You know, I know, for example, that I think Danny is doing it tonight, and I commend him for this. So moderate a panel discussion is the elective at level 4, I think it's one of the electives, or it could be in level 5. And that was part of one of the advanced manuals back in the legacy program, and it was about 20 to 30 minutes. And if that's what Danny's doing, this is a great way to do it. I've also done it, but I've done it as topics master. So you don't have to stand up and take 20 minutes doing a speech on it. You put it into as a topics master and you use it. I had 2 people, I decided upon a topic, had 2 experts from the club talk on it, and then we opened it up to the members who were in attendance, and we did it like a topic session. So, you know, 15 or 20 minutes, and I got my project done, and we had a whole topic session. So I didn't take up a complete 20-minute speech in the speech section of the program. And I think, Danny, that's probably answered what Bobby had asked.
As you say, I remember the old legacy system, and I did public relations, and a lot of what was in those old manuals is now in the various stages. So, yeah. Right, coming back to John. This is a question from Jamie Patel. I don't know if he's on the call. I didn't see his name. Where can I find details of what is required for Pathways projects?
Thank you, Danny. This is a really good question. I think this is a frustrating aspect for many of us, is finding the information that helps us plan what we want to do in our pathway journey. Earlier this evening, I looked up on, I went on Google, because that's a great place to start for me anyway, and looked up pathways training or pathway project information. And there's a number of districts across the globe that have built into their websites information on pathways. So there's a couple that came to mind. One is the D57 Toastmasters, and the other one is the District 17, which is Western Australia. And on those websites, you can access from the top level path. You can delve into the projects within that path. It lists all the projects, and then there's a link from those projects into the summary of those projects and what's required in those projects. So you can very quickly, and I do this to look at the pathways that I'm following, the paths that I'm following. I look into that, and then I can see all the electives in a list, and I can look at the electives, see what's involved in those electives, and then decide in advance which ones appeal to me. So my advice would be to look at those 2 websites in particular. That's D57toastmasters.org and Toastmastersd17.org. Those are just 2 that I found. And within there, you'll be able to find some information on the paths, the levels, the electives, and all the projects in there. And also on Toastmasters International, there's within their learning experience section on Toastmasters International, there is some information there, but I find it sometimes a little bit more difficult to navigate through that. I want to find a quick link, click on this, takes me to that. There's my answer. Thank you, Danny.
John, will you be able to supply that information, and we will send it out to everybody who's on the call?
I'll send you the
because that might be helpful. I think I've also found District 4, which I think is Western United States. They've got a lot of good stuff on pathways there, and it's really useful. So don't worry about necessarily writing everything down tonight, but we will be sending out a link to the recording and also any resources that people mention. Okay, Somesh, back to you. Let me just find this question on chat. I shall get there in a minute. Philip Campani has asked, some of the key level 5 projects involve teams of people, which may not be possible for some people. What do you see as a possible solution to that? Somesh, please.
Thanks, Philip Campani, for your question. Generally, what people do is when we are organizing things in Toastmasters, for example, if we are part of a committee and we want to increase the membership within our club, for example, the public relations or membership team, we can create a team of individuals and work on a project so that the most important thing about all these pathways projects is that they are very practical. They're practical oriented projects which directly help us in terms of our communication and leadership skills. So what I would suggest is we get involved in the club growth, for example, different projects. And the project need not be only Toastmasters project. It could be some project that is from that we are doing in our own organization as well. And then we can come back and give a presentation on what our teams were. Of course, there has to be one Toastmaster present in terms of verifying that they need to be in there. So there are various ways in which this can be done. But the most important thing that Pathways is trying to help us here is to implement things. The last level in Pathways is demonstrate expertise. So it starts from mastering fundamentals. Then we have to learn our style. Then the third level is in terms of increasing the knowledge. The fourth level is in terms of building up the skills. And the fifth level is demonstrating experience. So demonstrating experience would mean that we do something practical along with a team of people and get things done. So what I would suggest is try and look out for some areas that need improvement within our club and form a team and try and progress that particular aspect. That would be the best way to do it. Thank you very much, Philip Khan.
Thanks so much. I suppose also it doesn't necessarily have to be people physically in the same room for the level 5s, does it? So it could be a Zoom or a Teams. Exactly,
Danny. And especially in our current unprecedented circumstances, this seems to be the primary way of communication, which is the way it is now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thanks for that so much. Now, Patricia, a question from Martin Farrell. In level 1, when talking about the 2 speeches in the evaluation project, people refer to the first speech and the second speech. Any tips for people that confuse the first and the right? And this, I've had an example of that this week. People not realizing the evaluation feedback is 2 speeches. Have you got any tips for helping clubs with that?
All right, thanks, Nania. Thanks, Martin. And this is a really good question, and it's one that comes up constantly. And I suppose most of us probably have our own way of dealing with it. So the way I deal with it is, I do think this is one that Toastmasters International should change. But the way I deal with it is, you do your icebreaker, and then when it comes to that evaluation, or sorry, what's it called? The evaluation and
feedback.
It's called evaluation and feedback.
Thank you. Evaluation and feedback project. I always say, if I'm showing it level 1, I always break it down into 3 parts. So I'll have 2A, 2B, and 2C. So 2A will be the first, what they call the first 5 to 7 minute speech. 2B will be the second 5 to 7 minute speech, taking on the feedback. And then 2C will be doing an evaluation of a speaker in your club or outside your club and making sure that you have that evaluated. So I always break it down into 3. And then it's very important to say that you do not go back into the project. It's all one project. So you do not go back into that project to assess your skills after in order to complete it until you've completed the 3 parts. At that stage, you go back in, assess your skills after, and that will trigger off the level completion, or the project completion, sorry. So does that make any sense, Martin?
Thanks indeed. Yeah, I love the 2A, 2B, 2C. I'm just wondering why I didn't think of that myself a year ago.
I think, Martin, I think that might have gone now with the new level 1. So the old level 1, it would definitely be 2A, B, and C. With the new level 1, that may have gone to 1 to maybe 3A, B, and C, or 4A, B.
Yeah, but there's still the 3. There's still the 3 and 1.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks, Patricia. That's excellent.
No problem.
Okay, thank you for that, Patricia. Now, John, I think I'll ask you this one because you're going through this process at the moment. It's a question from Brenda. Do you have any ideas for the DTM project? And could you just outline what's the difference between the HPL and DTM projects? Of course, HPL was in the legacy. Well, I'll let you explain that. Are you okay with the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Just give me 1 second while I. So the Pathways DTM comprises a number of different aspects to it. The two paths, some club growth, club support, and within the education part, so the complete two paths, and also what they call the DTM project. So the DTM project is different to the HPL project. The HPL project, the High Performance Leadership Project, was a separate project in the legacy system. It is now integral within most of the paths, not all the paths, but in most of the paths, it's either there as a requirement or an elective, the HPL, High Performance Leadership Project. The DTM project is a separate project, and it's based on taking a leadership role, and it can be either within the Toastmasters environment or outside the Toastmasters environment. Unlike the HPL, you don't have to have a guidance committee. So it's about what you do as a leader yourself. So you can choose to do it either as a Toastmaster project. So for example, if you're taking a role in district, maybe supporting the Pathways program, you could use that as a DTM project. Or if you're doing something in your own personal professional environment, you can use that as your DTM project. You can only access the DTM project once you have completed level 3 in your second path. So once you've completed level 3 in your second path, then you can ask TM to release the DTM project information, and then you can start working on your DTM project from then. And it's one of the requirements for the DTM within the Pathways framework. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you, John. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
Danny.
Sorry, who's that?
Larry here. Just to John on that, what do you mean by release?
Okay, so
after doing level 3 in your second, can you explain that a bit more, please?
So to access the DTM project, the project on Basecamp, you can only access it once you've completed one full path, and then you've completed level 3 of your second path. At that point, you can request TM to release or give you access to that learning portal for your DTM project. So it doesn't come automatic. You have to complete level 1 path, complete level 3 of your second path, and then you can access the project. So it sits, although it sits within Pathways, it's a separate requirement to get into it. It's similar to the mentoring program that you can only access after you've completed level 2.
So you apply directly to TMHQ for that?
Yeah, I think so. I'll double check that and let you know. But I'm pretty sure that I have to send an email to education to say, can you give me access on my Basecamp for the DTM project?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, John, because I've done that recently. Once I finished level 3 in my second path, and you're quite correct. And the reason is to give you, so that you can get started on that DTM project. You don't have to wait until you complete the level.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
just to give you, you can get started on it, but they don't want to give it to you too early either. They want to be sure you're going to do it.
But could you be in the middle of doing a leadership project and apply, or do you have to start your leadership project after applying? Sorry about all the questions.
Okay, so I've got an answer for that. My answer to that is that rules are for the obedience of fools and the guidance of wise men. So if you feel that you're working on a project that is applicable to the DTM project, then I suggest you speak to your VPE or the club president or your area director and say, I'm working on this project at work. I'd like to use that as my DTM project and find a way through it. Because for me, Pathways is all about the opportunities. And if you see an opportunity, you should seize the opportunity and find a way of making that applicable to your learning and personal goals. Everything in Toastmasters is about your personal goals and aspirations. So find the opportunities. When the opportunities come around, identify how you can use them, and particularly on the DTM project, particularly if you've already built the skills up, or you're an experienced leader, you've done some of the HPL projects, then it's an ideal opportunity to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for that, John. Somesh, Brenda again. Do you have any suggestions for how you might onboard new members to Pathways? How do you get new members onto Pathways in the first place? Somesh.
Yes, it comes down to the clubs having a proper streamlined way of onboarding members. And I think every club do it in their own unique way. And this is the wonderful environment of Toastmasters, that there is a structure, but there is a uniqueness within the structure in terms of how the clubs operate. So some clubs would have the VP education themselves coming in touch with the members and informing them and running through. Some clubs would have the mentor system where the mentors would come on board and help the new members. So I think it depends on the individual clubs, how they want to do it. But it's very important that they have a process of onboarding, which is very clear to the members who join. That is the most important thing that I would say. So that's my very short summary. If you want to continue any other follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Patricia, now there's a question here from Jim Plunkett, Lima, but it's also one that's been sent in by Dec McCluskey. Jim's question is, if you belong to 2 or more clubs, what is the rule on crediting your project for advancement in Pathways? Dec asks, there seems to be some mystery, some confusion about how you allocate your projects to a club so a club can get their DCP points. So if you're a member of 2 clubs or more, how is your project, how do you apportion your credit for DCP to the particular club you want to? And is there a way that TI could send a confirmatory email to say which club you've been credited with? Is that okay? Do you want to repeat it?
Danny, you're doing a great job there. So you are on this question. And I'm going to give you the simple answer. Okay. I believe in doing things simply. Keep it simple is always been my motto. There is the more complicated one, which we can follow up with, but the simple way is that if you are a member of more than one club, so I'm a member of Balbriggan Toastmasters and I complete my level 4, but I don't really want to I'm going to pass it on to my other club, Society. Now don't get excited, Philip, I'm not giving it to Society, but this is in my head, I'm going to give it to Society because they need my level 4. So I would simply go and I would complete my level 4, have my VPE in Balbriggan complete the project for me, do the level completion approval for me. But I would say to my VPE, please do not go and register this for the club because I'm actually going to give it to my other club. And then I would go to the VPE and Society and I'd say, If you go in there, you can register now in Club Central, my level 4 award. I just find that's the simplest way of doing it. And VPEs, it's no problem. You just go and say, and ask them very nicely, and they will say, yeah, fine, no problem. There is another way. So if you go into your profile and you go to Basecamp, if you're a member of more than one club, and the drop-down menu, you can select a different club. It will default to the one that you're probably mostly using, but you can select. So if I want, I could go into society and select society instead of Balbriggan, and do my level 4 that way. And when I'm going then to approve it, do it through society. But for me personally, I find it simpler just to ask the PPE, just say, hold off on registering this award. I'm not giving it to this particular club. I'm going elsewhere.
And
Jim, does that answer the question? So are you coming back to Molly Malone Toastmasters, Jim?
And I suppose linking it back to a previous question about applying, giving permission through Basecamp when somebody's completed a level and then going to the educational awards bit, maybe keeping that makes it a bit simpler if you want to credit it to another club, because you would simply get acknowledged in one club but ask another club to apply. So maybe there is some logic in that. But so thanks for that, Patricia. That's very clear enunciation of that issue. Now, coming back to John, I've got a question here from Justin Barry. How do we persuade members to take the icebreaker again when they move on to their second, third pathway? I know this is an issue that has come up before, but what's your advice?
Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Justin, because this really is, I find this one of the most interesting things about pathways, particularly when you've finished one path and you can start a second path. So, and I think an icebreaker, I think we can all agree that when we did our first icebreaker, we were new to Toastmasters. It was quite a new experience. And there was probably something in the speech that as we've progressed through our Toastmaster time, there's opportunity to improve that introduction speech or take a different approach to it. So I would, for me personally, I enjoy doing the icebreaker speech because it gives me an opportunity to speak to members that don't know me in the club. So it might be, a couple of years since I did my last icebreaker. So it's an opportunity for me to introduce myself to newer members. Secondly, it allows me to redo a speech on a topic or the icebreaker speech and try and put into place some of the skills that I've learned from the icebreaker speech. And thirdly, I think most importantly, as a longer established member of the club, I think it's a bit of a leveler, and it demonstrates to everybody in the club, whether they've been in the club for 5 years or 5 months, that the icebreaker speech is a good speech. It's an excellent speech to give you the opportunity to present yourself. And also maybe some of the new members will feel a little bit more confident in doing their icebreaker if they've seen a senior member do their icebreaker speech. So I think anybody that is reluctant to do a second icebreaker speech, perhaps they're not looking at it from the point of view of an opportunity to develop their own skills, practice what they've learned, and demonstrate to their newer members. I hope that helps.
Is Justin on the call?
Just Danny, and sorry for hogging the meeting a bit, but I'm just looking at the purpose of the icebreaker. And if you have guests at your meeting, and the purpose is to introduce yourself to the club and learn the basic structure of a public speech. Now that's grand for your first icebreaker, but to be continually having that purpose really for the second, third, fourth, fifth path, and you have guests at a meeting and you're coming up there as an experienced Toastmaster and you're doing a fantastic super speech, it may be a bit off-putting for guests, maybe. That's the only issue I have with it. I asked this question the last D71 Patricia, in fairness, answered it very well. It's a second chance to tell people about your life and whatsoever, but the purpose is the problem I would have with it.
Can I just come back on that, Danny? I don't disagree on any of those comments at all. I think the question was about what would you say to somebody who is reluctant to do the icebreaker speech? And again, I think, you know, we're not able to change the structure of the Pathways program. So I think we have to make the very best of it and find the opportunities to exploit those speech chances, and maybe do the speech at a different club or an advanced Toastmaster club.
Okay, Patricia, sorry, you wanted to.
I just want to come in on really, I mean, John has answered the question, but just, Larry, just to say that two things. One, not just me, but many Toastmasters who were around during the legacy program repeated a CC lots of times to get credit for their club. And because they'd done so many advanced manuals, they just couldn't face doing any more. So they repeated the CC, in which case they did an icebreaker every single time. I did icebreakers, I'd say, in the old system about 7 times. And there were members who did them much more often than that. But the other thing I would say, Larry, is that if you actually go into that project for the icebreaker, it will say, yes, it's a way of introducing yourself, but it will say, also make it very clear that you do not have to talk about yourself. And you can talk on something else, because not every new member is going to be comfortable talking about themselves. And they may prefer to do an icebreaker on something else. So I think you're right with the purpose, but I think if you go into the project, you'll find that it clarifies that out, that it doesn't have to be about yourself.
Thank you. Somesh?
Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Larry, for asking this very fundamental question. And the way I have dealt with this is in terms of going back to the originals of what all those paths are related to. For example, we have dynamic leadership, effective coaching, engaging humor, innovative planning, motivational strategies, team collaboration, visionary communication. All these are different topics. So dynamic leadership, what I have done dynamic leadership and effective coaching, the 2 parts. The Toastmasters International recommended me effective coaching. So I started with effective coaching. And what I have done in my icebreaker is bring in the elements of coaching that I have done in my life and make that as a primary aspect. When I did the dynamic leadership, I brought in the whatever dynamic leadership aspects that I have done in my life. Now I'm doing engaging humor. So I've tried to, in my icebreaker, I've tried to bring in some humorous element, like how my daughter is speaking with me. She's trying to teach me Irish. I know very few words of Irish. My daughter comes from school and teaches me new words of Irish. She's a 5-year-old. So I'm bringing in that element in my icebreaker. So I think that would be the best way to deal with this, because each of the paths are really different. They're helping us to concentrate on one particular topic. And let's make that as the goal for the whole path when we do it. So that's my 2 cents, Larry. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Somesh and Patricia. Well, thanks all the panel for that. I mean, it is an issue that does crop up quite a lot. And obviously there are various ways around it, as you've illustrated. I've got a question, sort of suggestion here from Julie Kenny. Members who worked the previous legacy program often used to stop at the CC manual and avoid the advanced manuals. Do you think some issues mentioned about the level 4 and 5 are because they are now more visible and expected than those advanced manuals? Somesh, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, please do. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. It's from Julie. Members who worked the previous program, the legacy, usually stopped at the competent communicator manual and avoided doing any advanced manuals. Do you think some of the issues with the level 4 and 5 are because they're now more visible and expected than those advanced manuals? So you actually see that there are things like podcasts and leading a panel discussion, which were only in advanced modules before. Do you think that's part of the issue? And as a sort of supplementary question, how do you think we might overcome that? How do you think we might suggest to members not to be perhaps too worried about level 4 and 5 at the moment?
Yeah, I agree with you, Julie. I think that is that kind of aspect as well. Because when we were doing our DTM or anything progressing after competent communicator in our legacy system, we had this advanced communicator, bronze, silver, and gold, and all those, and it came in very slowly. Here, everything is evident from the beginning. So yeah, I think it is a valid point. The silver lining that I would say in pathways is the amount of electives that we have to choose from. And it's very important to be cognizant of that fact that there is huge range of electives that we can choose from. And if a person is not happy with, say, podcast or things like that, which are a little bit more technologically involved, they can choose something else, like leading a panel discussion, for example. It's not something that you have to do a podcast as such, really. So all these, there are so many. The range is quite huge there in terms of the electives. So I think people should take advantage of that, get ourselves acquainted with what is available, the whole thing, whole range, and then choose whatever we think we would be able to do. And of course, we should challenge ourselves as well, because the whole thing about all this voluntary learning that we are doing is we keep challenging ourselves. We want to get outside the comfort zone. Slowly getting outside the comfort zone and start doing things which we probably would not have done. So I think we have to look at it from that perspective as well. Is that okay, Julie? Do you have any further questions? Thank you for your question. Thanks, Danny.
Just as a follow-up, Somesh, one of the things I suggest to new members, and I can't claim that this is my idea, but what we suggest is to actually look at all the pathways before they actually choose one, because sometimes they might see, say, for example, coaching and think, well, that's part of my work, I'll do that. But when they get to the stage, to the level 4 or 5, it might not fit in with what they want. Do you think, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree with you, Danny. I think it's very important to understand the 11 parts that we have and which one we want to focus on. So the overview of what is there in each of the parts and what are the mandatory modules, what are the electives, and the whole across the whole parts. And that's where I find the d4tm.org /pathways. They give a very good summary of the whole different. It's a very tabbed approach, and the whole thing can be seen at a quick glance. So I would really recommend, if someone wants to have a quick glance at all the parts and all the levels, d4tm.org /pathways is a very good place to go in.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that so much. And again, we can send this information out after the meeting. So if you don't get a chance to write it down, that's fine. Patricia, just coming back to you, there was a supplementary I didn't pick up from Moira O'Brien about which club your project would be credited to. And she says to finalize a level, you need to be logged in to the club you wish the path to be credited.
Oh, I'm going this way saying that but now I have to, I'm doubting myself now. Do I have to be logged in? No, because, I show up as a member on both clubs, or 3 clubs or 4 clubs. And therefore I go in and I complete my project or my level, and it's marked complete. And then I go to the VPE of my next club, and I would be up there. I'd be showing on that club with, actually, I have to say, I'm not really sure about the answer to that. John, do you know it? Yes.
Yeah, I think the confusion is that if you complete your level on Basecamp, so if you complete it with one club, the VP of that club gets the email from TMI to say this member has now completed the level. Please go on and confirm the level, and don't forget to go onto Club Central to get the DCP. So if you follow the path where you go on with one club and want another club to get the DCP credit, then you have to tell the VPE before they get the email from TMI to say that you've completed the path. Otherwise, unless I know the member's a dual member, so as a VPE, if I know a member's a dual member, then I will say to them, I've confirmed it on TMI. Do you want this club to take the credit, or would you prefer your other club to take the credit? In which case, I'll just drop the VPE at your other club an email to say that. But the safest way is to log on Basecamp to the club that you want to take, to acknowledge you've completed the path, and they will then get the email to say, your member has completed the path, confirm it on Basecamp, and don't forget to go to Club Central. And I think that's where it's happened in the past, where people have just gone on, put it on, not really checked which one they've logged on at, and then the VP has automatically gone through the process, approved the path on Basecamp, and then taken the credit on Club Central.
Yeah.
So it's really all about communication. If you're a member of two clubs, I would always advise you either remember to go onto the club you want to get the email to, and if you don't, make a point of saying to your VPE, if you get an email from TMI saying I've completed a level, please let me know, because I may, depending on which club needs the credit. So, for example, I know in my club we may get 4 or 5 level 1s, so somebody else getting a level 1 isn't necessarily going to help our DCP cause, whereas the dual member may be helping their other club by getting the level 1 who's perhaps struggling to get those level 1s.
Yeah, and that explains it far better than I was doing, John, I have to say. And thank you very much. Yes, so it is, you have to be ahead of the posse. I think it's the very old terminology going back to the cowboy and Indians days. You have to be ahead of the posse and know exactly, no dithering at the end. You have to know where you're going to give that award.
Okay, thanks, Somesh.
Yeah, I just wanted to concur with what John said. That the communication part is extremely important there. In order to, if you're a member of multiple clubs, it is important to inform the VP that I want to credit you this, I want to credit the other club this. What would happen is the email will go to all the VPs, and the VP who would approve it first will get the credit. So that's why it's very important to inform in advance. And this is very good in terms of our planning as well. So if we plan to do all these speeches, we can say that I'm going to give this level to this club and that level to the other club, and then inform the VPs in advance. That would be the best way.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it obviously is only something to think about if you're a member of more than one club. And, you know, I know at Leicester, there's only perhaps 1 or 2 that are dual members, so it's not a massive issue, but it can cause some confusion. I think we've got time just for one last question, and any of the panel. This is from Katuta Lumpa. A question for the panel. Are there any test systems, including test data, for example, available for Pathways Easy Speak or Stroke Easy Speak? So, for example, for use to train members. So are there any systems, is there anything out there that can help train people on Easy Speak Pathways? Anybody? John? Oh, sorry, Patricia?
Certainly there isn't for just Pathways alone. I think, you know, for me, this is a question I asked right at the very outset. Shouldn't there be a section in Pathways where those of us who are Pathways ambassadors and Pathways guides could have trialed Pathways and could have shown members what exactly was involved in Pathways at the time it was being rolled out? So I think it's a great idea. I think there should be a section within Pathways where you can try things out. And I think every club should have access to it. But right now there isn't. And I don't know about Easy Speak.
Somesh?
I'm concurring with what Patricia said. We don't have any test system. What we have to understand here is we are a voluntary organization here, in terms of the whole path, Toastmasters International. It's a voluntary organization. So in terms of what we are doing here, in terms of understanding and all the things, it can be done in the real system as well. So we are not going to cause any hassle to any production environment or anything as such. So we can take a real life example and use it as well. I think that option is available. And I wanted to also stress that this the aspect that we have in terms of the speech craft, I think that's like a test system for the people who would like to join Toastmasters International. So they come in, actually all those things that they do in the speech craft, that is considered as what they have done for the level 1 system in the Toastmasters International. So that's another aspect as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I've just seen one last question, which I think if we can answer in 2 minutes would be a miracle, but let's give it a go. This is Toastmasters. From Elizabeth Jordan, how do you think clubs can embed a sustained pathways culture, sustainable pathways culture? John.
So I think that to sustain a pathways culture is all about people that have got experience in Toastmasters, embracing their learning experience, supporting the VPEs, and recognition. I think recognition is one of the key things. If you're a member of a club, and one of the things about pathways that I quite like is the fact that the levels, to reach a level completion is not an insurmountable task. You're not looking at a big manual that you've got to work through X number of speeches. They really are sizable chunks that you can plan within a 6 month or a 12-month project. And once you get that award, I think recognition at a club level is so important. So I think if the club is recognizing the speakers, giving credit where people are putting a lot of effort into their pathways projects, maybe trying something different and encouraging that, and then showing recognition for reaching award levels. I think that is the way that clubs will benefit from pathways and people will feel more engaged. And one last thing, coming back to one of the other questions about working together as a team, I firmly believe that when you're working together as a team and you're working with other individuals, then you've got an opportunity to learn more, to contribute more, and to have more fun. So I think those are the things that you should look for when you're working at the club level on making pathways engaging for everybody.
Okay, Somesh, one last word.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say this is the only show in the town that we have. So we don't have any other alternative other than making it a part of our sustainable culture. Otherwise, what will happen is people will be there who will do their speeches and everything else, but they would not be there in the Toastmasters International pathway system. And of course, there would be some outliers like that in our clubs. And I think that's fine. We are a voluntary organization after all. We cannot force people to go and join. But those will be only outliers, I would say. But I think majority of people will take it up, and we are going on the pathway towards success. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you so much. And now I'm afraid we must draw the evening to a close. I know an hour can only help us scratch the surface of pathways and help some people with some of the issues they have. But there is plenty of training available. We regularly put on a training evening. Patricia led one earlier in November for us for base camp, and we regularly put them on throughout the year. Any of the websites which have been mentioned tonight, we will put in a document and send that out to people. I'd also recommend that Tanya Barad, who is a member at New Street, Birmingham, has produced some videos on how to access pathways, how to log on and start the process, which are on YouTube. They are very useful. And so thank you. As I said, this is the last training session of this year. We will be back next year. I'd like to thank all the panelists for giving up the time. it is an incredibly difficult subject to be so succinct about, but I think they've managed it, and we've got lots of answers there tonight. So please help me give a thanks to our panelists for tonight. So thanks very much to the panel. And I'd also like to thank people behind the scene who, you know, are there, have been there week in, week out to support us. The Zoom team, thank you, Geroid and Cameron. They do a fantastic job making this thing work as well as it does, because believe you me, if it was left to me, we probably wouldn't have had half the presentations, and you'd have all been in some sort of breakout room in the ether somewhere. So a big thanks to them for supporting us. So that's the meeting over. Have a great Christmas. And also, I did forget, to our Scottish friends, happy St Andrew's Day and good night. Thank you.